I woke at 2 a.m. to find my husband Derek quietly photographing my credit cards. In the dim light of his phone, I pretended to stay asleep, heart pounding, as he carefully copied down numbers, expiration dates, and security codes. When he slipped back into bed, I lay there stunned, processing the betrayal. By morning, he was gone with just a text. Business trip came up, back next week. I checked my accounts and gasped $50,000 worth of luxury purchases and flights to Paris. The numbers on my banking app blurred as I scrolled through transaction after transaction. First-class airfare to Charles de Gaulle Airport, $8,400. Presidential suite at the Ritz Paris, $12,000 for 7 nights. Designer shopping sprees at Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and Cartier, another $15,000. Michelin-starred restaurant charges, luxury spa treatments, private car services. My stomach churned as each swipe revealed another financial wound. But something felt wrong beyond the obvious theft. As a forensic accountant specializing in divorce fraud cases, I'd spent 12 years tracking financial deception. My professional instincts screamed that this pattern was too elaborate, too carefully planned to be spontaneous greed. I grabbed my laptop and opened the specialized software I used to trace hidden assets for my law firm's clients. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. Derek hadn't just stolen my credit card information, he'd purchased 2 of everything. 2 first-class tickets, 2 hotel key cards, couples massage packages, romantic dinner reservations for 2 at Le Bernardin's sister restaurant in Paris. My hands trembled as I cross-referenced the dates with Derek's recent behavior. 3 months of mysterious phone calls that ended when I entered the room, password changes on devices we'd always shared openly, evening, work meetings that couldn't be verified through his company directory, late-night internet searches that disappeared from our browser history. The professional side of my brain kicked into high gear, suppressing the emotional devastation. I'd helped dozens of women uncover similar betrayals, but experiencing it firsthand felt like drowning in acid. Every financial forensics technique I'd mastered for my clients now served as my lifeline. I called my bank's fraud department expecting to file a routine theft report. What I discovered instead made my blood freeze. "Ms. Williams," the fraud specialist said carefully, "these charges were made using an authorized user card linked to an account that's been active for 6 months. Are you saying you didn't approve this additional cardholder?" "What additional account?" I demanded. The silence stretched uncomfortably before she continued. "Sir Derek Williams opened a secondary account using your social security number and employment verification. He's been systematically transferring funds from your joint savings. The total moved to his private account is $25,000. The room spun around me. This wasn't impulsive theft. It was calculated financial abuse, designed to leave me broke and broken while he started a new life. Derek had weaponized my own professional success against me using my excellent credit and financial stability to fund his betrayal. I sat in our kitchen surrounded by the life we'd built together over 3 years of marriage, realizing it had all been an elaborate lie. But Derek had made one critical mistake. He'd stolen from a woman who spent her career catching financial predators. The devastation was transforming into something far more dangerous: professional determination. Derek thought he was playing against a naive housewife. He had no idea he'd just declared war on someone who could trace financial breadcrumbs through offshore accounts and shell corporations in her sleep. I called Jessica Martinez, a private investigator I'd worked with on complex divorce cases. Within 2 hours, she was sitting at my kitchen table with her laptop open and a grim expression. "Clementine, what I'm about to show you is going to hurt," Jessica warned. "Are you ready?" She pulled up a series of Instagram photos geotagged from Paris. Derek stood arm in arm with a stunning young woman with platinum blonde hair and perfectly applied makeup. She wore the Cartier jewelry I'd seen charged to my card, beaming at the camera, while Derek kissed her cheek outside the Louvre. Her name is Madison Torres, 24 years old social media influencer with 300,000 followers. They met at a digital marketing conference in Denver 6 months ago. Jessica's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Look at this." She showed me Madison's posts from the past 6 months. Expensive dinners Derek had supposedly attended for work weekend trips to Aspen. I'd been told were client meetings, designer gifts I'd assumed he'd bought with bonuses that never materialized. "There's more," Jessica continued grimly. "Derek's been telling Madison he's divorced. Look at these text screenshots she posted to her close friend's story. My heart shattered as I read Derek's lies. He'd told Madison I was his crazy ex-wife, who was stalking him for alimony. He'd shown her fabricated bank statements claiming he earned 4 times his actual salary. He'd promised her luxury experiences and a lifestyle that my credit cards were apparently funding. But Jessica's investigation revealed something even more disturbing. I ran Derek's credit history and public records. Clementine, this isn't his first time. He has authorized user cards from accounts belonging to 2 previous girlfriends, Amanda Richardson in Phoenix and Sarah Chen in Seattle. Both filed restraining orders against him for financial abuse. My professional training took over as we built Derek's profile. Amanda had been a successful real estate agent who discovered Derek had charged $38,000 to her business credit cards for his romantic getaway with another woman. Sarah was a software engineer who'd found Derek using her identity to open business loans he never intended to repay. The pattern is identical, Jessica explained. He targets financially successful women, studies their professional networks and banking relationships, gains access to their accounts, then disappears with another woman, while leaving his victims financially devastated. I scheduled an emergency meeting with Rachel Morrison, the attorney my firm used for complex fraud cases. Rachel's office overlooked downtown Denver's financial district, and she'd built her reputation prosecuting white-collar crime. Derek's actions constitute multiple felonies, Rachel explained after reviewing Jessica's evidence: identity theft, credit card fraud, wire fraud. Because he crossed state lines and potentially RICO violations, if we can establish an ongoing criminal enterprise. As we talked, my phone buzzed with a social media notification. Madison had posted a story from their Paris hotel room showing off shopping bags while Derek showered. The caption read, "When your man surprises you with the trip of a lifetime, living my best life with the most generous boyfriend ever." I felt an unexpected wave of pity for Madison. She was a victim too, caught in Derek's web of lies, just like I had been. But that sympathy was quickly replaced by ice-cold rage when Jessica showed me Derek's most recent emails. "He's been researching you, Clementine. Look at this." My blood turned to ice as I scrolled through Derek's browser history on our shared laptop. He'd been systematically downloading my client list, copying my professional credentials, and researching my banking relationships. Folder after folder contained screenshots of my work files, contact information for my highest-paying clients, and detailed notes about my forensic accounting techniques. "He wasn't just planning to steal your money," Rachel said quietly. "He was planning to steal your professional identity." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Derek's plan wasn't just about funding a European vacation with his girlfriend. He intended to destroy my business, steal my clients, and leave me professionally ruined while he started over with my career credentials and Madison on his arm. But Derek had made one crucial miscalculation. He'd underestimated the woman he'd married. I wasn't just another successful mark to be discarded. I was a forensic accountant who specialized in catching financial predators exactly like him. I looked at Jessica and Rachel with newfound determination. Let him come home. Let him think he's won. Because when Derek walks through that door, expecting to find a broken victim, he's going to discover he messed with the wrong woman. 8 days after Derek's departure, I heard his key in the front door at 3:30 in the afternoon. I was sitting calmly at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and my laptop open, having spent the morning coordinating with federal agents, who were now positioned strategically around our neighborhood. Derek strutted through the entryway carrying Louis Vuitton shopping bags and wearing a new Rolex Submariner that had cost $8,000 of my money. His skin was golden from Mediterranean beaches, and he moved with the arrogance of a man who believed he'd successfully destroyed his wife's life. Well, he said, dropping the bags dramatically in our living room. "I see you're still here. I thought you might have crawled back to your parents by now." I sipped my coffee and smiled. "Welcome home, Derek. Did you enjoy your vacation?" His eyebrows shot up. He'd clearly expected tears, rage, or desperate pleading. Instead, I was treating his return like he'd come back from a routine business trip. "Vacation?" Derek laughed mockingly, pulling items from his shopping bags. "This was an investment in my future." Madison really appreciated finally dating a man who could afford to treat her properly. He displayed his purchases like trophies, a Hermes scarf designer cologne, expensive French wine and jewelry that probably cost more than most people's cars. Each item was a deliberate insult purchased with money he'd stolen from the woman he'd promised to love and cherish. She's incredible, Clementine. Young, beautiful, grateful. Not like you, always working, always analyzing everything to death, never appreciating what you had. Derek's voice dripped with calculated cruelty. Madison understands that a real man needs a woman who makes him feel important. I nodded thoughtfully. And how did you afford to make Madison feel so appreciated? Derek's grin widened with sadistic pleasure. Thanks for the upgrade, sweetheart. Your credit cards came in really handy. Madison was so impressed by my generosity. He leaned against our kitchen counter, watching my face carefully for the emotional breakdown he was orchestrating. I know you've seen the charges by now. $50,000 well spent on someone who actually deserves luxury. Interesting, I said, closing my laptop. Derek, in 3 years of marriage, what exactly do you think I do for work? The question clearly confused him. You're an accountant. You count money for rich people getting divorced. I laughed, actually laughed, which made Derek's confident expression flicker with uncertainty. I'm a forensic accountant, Derek. I specialize in tracking financial fraud and catching people who steal money in divorce cases. It's literally my job to catch people who do exactly what you just did. Derek's tan face paled slightly. So what you caught me? We both know you're too weak to actually do anything about it. I pulled out my phone and showed him a text message. Actually, I texted you something interesting while you were in Paris. Do you remember receiving any messages from me last week? Derek fumbled for his phone, scrolling through ignored messages. His face went white as he read, Thank you for using the honeypot credit card I set up after catching you photographing my real cards. Every transaction is being monitored by fraud investigators. Enjoy your vacation. What the hell does that mean? Derek's voice cracked. It means the credit card you stole wasn't connected to any of our real accounts, I explained calmly. When I caught you copying my card information at 2 a.m. 3 weeks ago, I set up a decoy account specifically designed to catch you in the act. Every single transaction you made triggered automatic alerts to federal fraud monitoring services. Derek's hands shook as he grabbed his shopping bags. You're lying. You're just trying to scare me. My friend Jessica has been documenting your entire European adventure with Madison, I continued. We have photographs, hotel records, restaurant receipts, and social media evidence of you spending money you knew you'd stolen. And Derek, credit card fraud over $50,000 is a federal felony. Derek's aggressive confidence crumbled as the reality of his situation began penetrating his narcissistic delusion. You can't prove anything. It's your word against mine. I opened my laptop and turned the screen toward him. Actually, Derek, you've been providing all the proof we needed. See, the forensic software I use for work has been backing up every device connected to our home network for the past 3 months. Your phone, your laptop, your tablet. I have everything. Derek lunged for his phone, frantically trying to delete photos and messages. I watched him with professional detachment as he realized the futility of his actions. Your browser history searching for untraceable ways to transfer money, screenshots you took of my client files, research into my professional credentials, text messages with Madison where you detailed your plans to clean out the old ball and chain, voice memos where you practiced telling her about your fake divorce. I ticked off each piece of evidence like items on a shopping list. Derek stopped trying to delete files and stared at me with dawning horror. You're not the woman I married. No, I agreed. The woman you married was someone who trusted you, someone who ignored her professional instincts because she believed in love. That woman is gone, Derek. You killed her when you chose to steal her identity and destroy her life for a vacation with your girlfriend. Derek's phone rang. He answered without looking at the caller ID, his voice shaking. Hello, Mr. Derek Williams. This is Agent Thompson with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant for your arrest. Through our front window, Derek could see federal agents approaching our house. His new Rolex caught the afternoon sunlight as his hands trembled uncontrollably. Clementine, he whispered, please, we can work this out. I'll pay everything back. Madison meant nothing to me. I stood up and walked to our coffee maker, pouring myself another cup. Derek, you spent 3 years studying my weaknesses, planning my destruction, and stealing my future. You made one critical mistake. What? He asked desperately. You confused kindness with stupidity, and you never bothered to understand what I'm actually capable of. The doorbell rang. Derek looked at me one last time, his designer clothes and expensive accessories suddenly looking like a costume on a man who'd forgotten he was just playing a role. The federal agents are here, I said conversationally. Your real vacation is about to begin. The arrest happened so quickly that Derek barely had time to process his new reality. Agent Thompson, a stern woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair, read Derek his rights, while two other agents secured our house as a crime scene. Derek's expensive vacation clothes hung awkwardly on his frame as handcuffs replaced his stolen Rolex. Mr. Williams, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and interstate transportation of stolen property, Agent Thompson announced. Your activities have triggered a federal investigation spanning multiple states and jurisdictions. Our neighbors gathered on their front lawns, watching Derek's humiliation unfold in broad daylight. Mrs. Patterson from next door shook her head disapprovingly, while Mr. Chen took photos with his phone. Derek's carefully constructed image as a successful businessman evaporated with each flash of the FBI badges. After Derek was loaded into the federal vehicle, Agent Thompson turned to me with professional respect. Ms. Williams, your documentation and evidence collection have been exceptional. Without your forensic skills, building this case would have taken months instead of weeks. There are other victims, aren't there? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Agent Thompson nodded grimly. Your case triggered a broader investigation. We've identified a pattern spanning 5 states and potentially dozens of victims. Derek Williams has been operating this scheme for at least 7 years. Within hours, my phone started ringing with calls from other women Derek had financially abused. Amanda Richardson from Phoenix called first, her voice shaking with emotion. I saw the news about Derek's arrest, Amanda said. I can't believe someone finally caught him. He destroyed my credit, stole $43,000, and left me bankrupt while he started over in Colorado. Sarah Chen from Seattle called next. Derek told everyone I was crazy when I tried to report him for fraud. He made it seem like a bitter ex-girlfriend making up stories. Thank you for proving he's a predator. But the most heartbreaking call came from Madison Torres. Ms. Williams, Madison sobbed through the phone. I had no idea Derek was married. He told me you were his divorced ex-wife, who was stalking him for money. I'm so sorry. He convinced me to max out my credit cards for what he called business investments. I'm $23,000 in debt because I believed his lies. I realized that Derek hadn't just stolen money from his victims, he'd systematically isolated us by turning us against each other. He told Madison I was crazy. He told me she was a gold digger. He told Amanda she was paranoid. Each woman had been convinced that she was Derek's only real victim, while the others were either complicit or delusional. The federal investigation revealed Derek's sophisticated methodology. He targeted successful professional women between 25 and 45 who had excellent credit and substantial savings. He studied their work patterns, gained access to their financial accounts, then systematically drained their resources while maintaining relationships with younger women who served as both accomplices and additional victims. Derek Williams represents a new evolution of financial predators, Agent Thompson explained during my formal victim interview. He combines traditional romance scams with identity theft and sophisticated psychological manipulation. His victims are specifically chosen for their financial success and emotional vulnerability. My law firm's partners called an emergency meeting to discuss my situation. Instead of the sympathetic concern I'd expected, managing partner Robert Hayes offered me a promotion. Clementine, your handling of this case demonstrates exactly the kind of forensic skills our white-collar crime division needs, Hayes explained. We're offering you a senior associate position specializing in financial abuse cases. Your first-hand experience combined with your technical expertise could help hundreds of victims. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek's attempt to destroy my career was actually launching it to a new level. But Derek wasn't finished trying to manipulate the situation. From the federal detention center, he began a campaign of psychological warfare designed to undermine my credibility and emotional stability. He called mutual friends claiming I'd entrapped him and that his actions were justified because I was emotionally unavailable. He wrote letters to my parents suggesting I'd driven him to desperation with my career obsession and lack of feminine warmth. His brother Michael called to scream at me over the phone. Derek made one mistake, and you destroyed his entire life. He's talking about suicide because you couldn't handle being married to a real man. Michael, I interrupted calmly, Derek stole $75,000 from me alone, and at least $300,000 from other women we've identified so far. That's not one mistake, that's a criminal career. The psychological pressure was intense, but therapy sessions provided by victim services helped me process the manipulation tactics Derek was still employing even from jail. Dr. Amanda Foster, a specialist in psychological abuse, helped me understand how Derek's continued attempts to control the narrative were part of his pathology. Narcissistic financial predators never accept responsibility, Dr. Foster explained. Derek will continue trying to make you doubt your own judgment and feel guilty for protecting yourself. That's how he maintained control for so long. 3 weeks after Derek's arrest, Agent Thompson called with news that changed everything. Clementine, we've uncovered something else, she said carefully. Derek's computer contained research into untraceable poisons and staged accident scenarios. Combined with his pattern of identity theft, we believe he was planning to murder you if his financial scheme failed. The room spun around me as the full scope of Derek's plan crystallized. He hadn't just been planning to steal my money and career, he'd been preparing to kill me and assume my identity completely. We're filing additional charges for conspiracy to commit murder, Agent Thompson continued. You didn't just escape financial ruin, Clementine. You escaped with your life. Suddenly, Derek's European vacation with Madison took on a sinister new dimension. He'd been creating an alibi for my disappearance while establishing himself as the grieving widower who would inherit my professional practice and financial assets. I sat in my living room that night, surrounded by the home we'd shared, finally understanding how close I'd come to losing everything, including my life itself. But instead of feeling terrified, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the professional instincts that had saved me. Derek thought he was preying on a naive wife. Instead, he targeted a woman whose career was built on catching predators exactly like him. His greatest strength, his ability to manipulate and deceive, had become completely useless against someone trained to see through financial lies. The woman Derek had married was gone. In her place stood someone far stronger, wiser, and more determined to ensure no other woman would suffer what we'd endured. 6 months later, the federal courthouse in Denver buzzed with activity as Derek's trial began. The prosecution team, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Walsh, had built their case around my forensic evidence and testimony from Derek's 12 identified victims. Derek entered the courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of his stolen designer clothes. His tan had faded to prison pallor, and his once confident swagger had been replaced by the nervous shuffle of a man facing 25 years to life in federal prison. His defense attorney, Marcus Powell, attempted a strategy that made my blood boil. Powell painted Derek as a troubled man driven to desperation by an emotionally withholding wife who prioritized her career over her marriage. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Powell argued during opening statements, Derek Williams is not a criminal mastermind. He's a broken man who made terrible choices because he felt inadequate next to his wife's professional success. When my turn came to testify, I walked to the witness stand wearing my best navy blue suit and carrying a 3-inch binder of evidence. The courtroom was packed with Derek's victims, their families, and reporters covering what the media had dubbed the identity theft romance scam trial. Ms. Williams, Prosecutor Walsh began. Please tell the jury about your professional background. I'm a forensic accountant with 12 years of experience tracking financial fraud and divorce and white-collar crime cases. I specialize in uncovering hidden assets, tracing money through complex financial instruments, and identifying patterns of financial abuse. I walk the jury through Derek's methodology with clinical precision, explaining how he'd studied my work patterns, gained access to my accounts, and systematically planned my financial destruction. When defense attorney Powell cross-examined me, he tried to suggest I'd somehow entrapped Derek. Ms. Williams, isn't it true that you set up a fake credit card specifically to catch your husband? I monitored my own financial accounts for unauthorized access after discovering my husband photographing my credit cards without permission. I corrected calmly. That's not entrapment, that's basic financial security. But you admit you were suspicious of your husband's activities. Yes, because my professional training taught me to recognize the warning signs of financial abuse. signs that unfortunately proved accurate. Powell's strategy backfired spectacularly. When Amanda Richardson took the stand the next day, Amanda, now 34, had rebuilt her real estate business after Derek's theft nearly bankrupted her 3 years earlier. Derek told me his ex-wife in Phoenix was stalking him for alimony, Amanda testified. He showed me fake financial documents claiming he earned $300,000 a year. When I discovered he'd stolen $38,000 from my business accounts, he convinced our mutual friends I was having a nervous breakdown and making up stories about him. Sarah Chen's testimony was equally damning. Derek researched my software engineering career for months before we started dating. He knew exactly how much money I made, what my credit limits were, and when my quarterly bonuses were deposited. Nothing about our relationship was genuine. I was just a financial target. But the most powerful testimony came from Madison Torres. Madison had cut her platinum hair to a natural brown bob and wore minimal makeup, looking younger and more vulnerable than in her Instagram photos. Derek told me Ms. Williams was his crazy ex-wife who was trying to steal his money, Madison said quietly. He showed me fake text messages supposedly from her threatening to destroy his credit out of spite. He convinced me to max out my credit cards for investment opportunities that never existed. Madison looked directly at me as she continued. I posted pictures from our Paris trip because I thought I was living a fairy tale with a successful businessman who loved me. I had no idea I was helping him spend money he'd stolen from his wife. Ms. Williams, I'm so sorry for what he did to you and for unknowingly participating in it. The prosecution's expert witness, forensic psychologist Dr. Jonathan Rivers, explained Derek's pattern as classic narcissistic financial abuse. Mr. Williams specifically targets financially successful women because their success provides both material resources and psychological satisfaction, Dr. Rivers testified. He enjoys the challenge of manipulating intelligent, accomplished women, and their professional credibility makes it easier for him to obtain credit and convince future victims of his legitimacy. Derek's defense crumbled when the prosecution presented evidence of his murder planning. FBI computer analyst Kevin Park testified about Derek's research into untraceable poisons, staged accidents, and methods for assuming another person's identity posthumously. The defendant spent considerable time researching how to make Ms. Williams's death appear accidental while positioning himself to inherit her business and financial assets. Park explained, "This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a carefully planned murder scheme." When Derek finally took the stand in his own defense, his testimony destroyed any remaining sympathy from the jury. Under cross-examination, he showed no remorse for his actions and continued trying to blame his victims. "These women were successful and wealthy," Derek said coldly. "They could afford the money I took. Clementine makes $200,000 a year, $50,000 was nothing to her." "So you felt entitled to steal from your wife because she was financially successful?" Prosecutor Walsh asked. "I felt entitled to live the lifestyle I deserved," Derek replied without shame. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all charges: wire fraud, identity theft, interstate transportation of stolen property, conspiracy to commit murder, and RICO violations for operating a continuing criminal enterprise. During the sentencing phase, 12 victims delivered impact statements describing how Derek's crimes had affected their lives. "I spoke last. Derek Williams didn't just steal money from me," I told the court. "He stole 3 years of my life through deception, threatened my safety through planned murder, and attempted to destroy my professional reputation through systematic identity theft. His crimes represent not just financial theft, but psychological terrorism designed to break his victims' spirits and make us doubt our own worth." Judge Margaret Chen sentenced Derek to 15 years in federal prison plus full restitution to all victims. As the bailiff led Derek away in shackles, he looked back at me one final time. "This isn't over," he mouthed silently. I smiled and mouthed back, "Yes, it is." Walking out of the courthouse that day, surrounded by the women Derek had victimized, I felt a profound sense of justice and community. We'd all been chosen as targets because of our strength and success. Now that same strength had brought down the man who'd tried to destroy us. 1 year after Derek's conviction, I stood in the lobby of my new forensic accounting firm, Williams & Associates Financial Crime Investigation. The space buzzed with activity as my team of 5 investigators and 3 victim advocates worked on cases spanning domestic financial abuse, corporate embezzlement, and identity theft schemes. Madison Torres walked through the front door, carrying coffee and a stack of educational brochures for our afternoon outreach meeting. She'd become my business partner 6 months earlier, combining her social media expertise with a newly completed business degree to help us reach financial abuse victims who might not otherwise seek help. The domestic violence shelter in Aurora wants us to present our financial safety workshop next month, Madison said, settling into the chair across from my desk. They're seeing more cases where abusers are using credit monitoring and banking apps to track their victims' spending. Madison had transformed in the years since Derek's arrest. Gone was the Instagram influencer persona, with its focus on luxury lifestyle content. In its place was a confident businesswoman, passionate about educating others to recognize financial manipulation tactics. I've been thinking about our expansion into other states, I said, reviewing our caseload. The FBI estimates there are thousands of Derek Williams-style predators operating across the country. We're barely scratching the surface. Our firm had gained national attention for innovative approaches to tracking financial abuse and helping victims rebuild their credit and independence. My techniques for identifying suspicious financial patterns were now taught in law enforcement training programs, and we'd consulted on 47 cases resulting in criminal convictions. The phone rang constantly with calls from women who'd seen our story in the news or found our educational content online. Each conversation reminded me how Derek's crimes were part of a much larger epidemic of financial abuse that specifically targeted successful women. My personal healing had progressed alongside my professional growth. Dr. Amanda Foster, my therapist, helped me process not just Derek's betrayal, but the subtle ways I'd been conditioned to ignore my professional instincts in personal relationships. "You're not the same woman who married Derek," Dr. Foster observed during one of our sessions. "That woman was generous and trusting. You still have those qualities, but now you also have healthy boundaries and unshakable confidence in your own judgment." Those boundaries had become important as I navigated my new relationship with Marcus Webb, a high school history teacher I'd met at a community education event about financial literacy. Marcus respected my independence, supported my advocacy work, and never showed interest in my financial information or business connections. It's refreshing to date someone who's more interested in my thoughts about teaching teenagers about compound interest than in my bank account balance, I confided to Madison during one of our weekly business meetings. Marcus had been patient with my initial hypervigilance about financial red flags. When he offered to split dinner checks or suggested inexpensive dates like hiking or museum visits, I found myself relaxing into the genuine equality he offered, rather than the performative generosity Derek had used as manipulation. My relationship with my parents had also healed as they came to understand how sophisticated financial predators operated. Initially, they'd questioned whether I should have known something was wrong with Derek, but education about psychological manipulation helped them recognize how victim blaming perpetuated abuse. "I'm proud of how you turned your worst experience into something that helps so many people," my mother said during our monthly dinner. "Derek tried to destroy you, but instead he created something beautiful." Derek continued attempting to manipulate the situation even from federal prison. He wrote letters to former mutual friends claiming I'd destroyed an innocent man's life, and that his conviction was the result of feminist bias in the legal system. Most people ignored his attempts at narrative control, but a few acquaintances surprised me by reaching out to suggest I move on and stop dwelling on the past. "It's not dwelling on the past to prevent future victims," I explained to one former neighbor who'd criticized my vindictive pursuit of Derek's prosecution. Derek's pattern spanned 7 years and dozens of victims. Stopping him probably saved other women from financial ruin or worse. The or worse part had become clearer as more details emerged about Derek's murder planning. FBI investigation revealed he'd researched the insurance policies and estate planning of several victims, suggesting he'd considered killing other women who'd become inconvenient to his schemes. Derek Williams represents an evolution in predatory behavior, Agent Thompson explained during a law enforcement conference, where I'd been invited to present our findings. He combines traditional romance fraud with identity theft, domestic abuse, and premeditated murder planning. Without victims like Clementine, who fought back with professional expertise, he might never have been stopped. Our firm's success had attracted attention from state legislators working to strengthen financial abuse protections. I testified before the Colorado State Senate about needed reforms in credit monitoring, victim services, and prosecution protocols. Current laws treat financial abuse as a property crime. I explained to the banking committee, but for victims, it's an attack on their identity autonomy and ability to escape dangerous relationships. We need systemic changes that reflect the psychological terrorism aspect of these crimes. The legislation passed unanimously, creating new requirements for financial institutions to provide enhanced fraud protection and victim support services. Similar bills were introduced in 12 other states, using our case as a model for comprehensive reform. Madison had also become a powerful advocate, using her social media skills to educate young women about financial red flags in relationships. Her Instagram account, now focused on financial literacy and abuse prevention, had grown to over 500,000 followers who shared their own stories and supported each other's recovery. I get messages every day from women who recognized manipulation tactics in their own relationships because of our content, Madison told me. Derek thought he was destroying us, but he actually created a network of survivors helping each other. Late one Friday afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door with unusual news. Clementine, there's a call from the federal prison where Derek Williams is incarcerated. Derek's cellmate wants to speak with you. The call revealed Derek's final secret, one that made my blood run cold. Ma'am, my name is Robert Jackson. I'm Derek Williams's cellmate, the voice said nervously. Derek's been talking about you constantly, and I thought you should know what he's planning. What kind of planning? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Derek's convinced he's going to appeal his conviction and get out early. He keeps talking about how you ruined everything and how he's going to finish what he started. He's been drawing maps of your neighborhood and asking other inmates about hiring people on the outside. My hand shook as I took notes. Even from federal prison, Derek was still trying to orchestrate my destruction. But that's not the worst part, Robert continued. Derek told me he'd been planning to poison you before his arrest. He said if the credit card scheme hadn't worked, he was going to put something in your coffee that would make your death look like a heart attack. I thanked Robert for the information and immediately called Agent Thompson. Within hours, Derek was transferred to a maximum security facility and placed in solitary confinement pending investigation of his continued threats. You saved your own life by being smart enough to catch him when you did, Agent Thompson said after reviewing the new evidence. Derek Williams is never getting out of prison now. That night, I sat in my home office, surrounded by case files from women whose lives we'd helped rebuild. Derek had intended to murder me and steal my identity, but instead, his crimes had led to a career dedicated to protecting others from predators like him. The woman Derek had married, trusting, generous, eager to believe the best in people, was gone forever, but in her place stood someone far stronger, wiser, and more determined to ensure justice prevailed over manipulation. 2 years after Derek's conviction, I received a phone call that brought both closure and complex emotions. Derek Williams had died in federal prison after attempting to manipulate the wrong inmate in a financial scheme involving commissary accounts and contraband cigarettes. Williams tried to convince another prisoner to give him access to family funds deposited for commissary purchases, Agent Thompson explained. The inmate he targeted was serving time for violent assault. Let's just say Derek's persuasive abilities weren't as effective in prison as they were with his previous victims. While I felt relief at the permanent end to Derek's threats and manipulation attempts, I also experienced unexpected grief, not for Derek himself, but for the 3 years of my life spent loving someone who'd never existed. The charming, supportive husband I thought I'd married had been a carefully constructed persona designed to gain access to my resources and professional reputation. My therapy with Dr. Foster helped me process the complex emotions surrounding Derek's death. It's normal to feel conflicted, she explained. You're not mourning Derek. You're mourning the relationship you thought you had, and grieving the innocence that's impossible to recover after such profound betrayal. But Derek's death also freed me to fully embrace the life I'd built from the ashes of his destruction. Williams and Associates had expanded to serve clients in 15 states with a team of 12 investigators and 8 victim advocates. Our techniques for identifying financial abuse patterns were now standard training for law enforcement agencies across the country. Madison had completed her MBA and opened a companion nonprofit organization focused specifically on helping young women rebuild after financial abuse. Her social media presence had grown to over 800,000 followers, who shared resources, supported each other's recovery, and educated friends about recognizing manipulation tactics. I used to post about luxury handbags and expensive restaurants to make my followers envious, Madison reflected during one of our monthly business meetings. Now I post about building emergency funds and recognizing credit monitoring abuse to help my followers stay safe. It's so much more meaningful. My personal life had also flourished in ways I'd never imagined possible during my marriage to Derek. Marcus Webb and I had moved in together after 18 months of dating, built on genuine compatibility, rather than manipulation and deception. I love that you're smarter than me about finances, Marcus said one evening as we reviewed our household budget together. Derek saw your expertise as a threat to his ego. I see it as one of your most attractive qualities. The contrast couldn't have been starker. Where Derek had demanded access to all my accounts and passwords, Marcus maintained his own banking and respected my professional boundaries. Where Derek had mocked my obsession with work, Marcus attended my speaking engagements and celebrated my professional victories. Our relationship was built on the kind of equality and respect I'd never experienced with Derek. We split household expenses, fairly supported each other's career goals, and made decisions together without anyone attempting to dominate or manipulate the process. My family relationships had also been transformed by my experience with Derek. My parents had initially blamed themselves for not recognizing warning signs, but education about sophisticated manipulation tactics helped them understand how skilled predators operate. Derek fooled all of us, my father admitted during our family's annual Christmas gathering. He was charming, successful, and said all the right things, but what impresses me most is how you turned his worst betrayal into your greatest strength. The ripple effects of Derek's case had created lasting systemic changes in how financial abuse was investigated and prosecuted. Legislation inspired by our advocacy had passed in 23 states, requiring enhanced victim protections, improved credit monitoring, and specialized training for prosecutors handling financial abuse cases. The banking industry had also implemented reforms based on patterns identified during Derek's investigation. New algorithms flagged suspicious authorized user activities, unusual account access patterns, and financial transfers that might indicate relationship-based fraud. Your case probably prevented hundreds of similar crimes, Agent Thompson said during a conference celebrating our collaborative successes. Derek's methodology was sophisticated enough to fool traditional fraud detection systems. The techniques you developed are now protecting women across the country. I'd also become a sought-after speaker at universities' law enforcement conferences and women's professional organizations. My presentations focused not just on recognizing financial red flags, but on trusting professional instincts even in personal relationships. Many successful women are socialized to compartmentalize their professional expertise. I explained to a gathering of female executives in Chicago. We're taught that applying business-level scrutiny to romantic relationships makes us cold or unromantic. But predators like Derek specifically target this vulnerability. The most rewarding aspect of my advocacy work was connecting with other survivors who transformed their experiences into positive action. Amanda Richardson had become a certified financial counselor specializing in helping abuse victims rebuild their credit. Sarah Chen had developed cybersecurity software specifically designed to protect domestic abuse victims from financial monitoring. Derek thought he was destroying individual women, Amanda observed during a reunion of Derek's identified victims. Instead, he created a network of advocates who are stronger together than we ever could have been alone. Each survivor had found her own path to healing and empowerment, but we all shared the knowledge that our strength had been tested and proven unbreakable. Derek had chosen us as targets because of our success and resilience. Those same qualities had ultimately brought about his downfall. Late one evening, I sat in my home office reviewing applications for our new scholarship fund, supporting women rebuilding their lives after financial abuse. The fund, established with restitution money recovered from Derek's assets, would provide educational opportunities and financial counseling for survivors nationwide. Looking at the photos of scholarship recipients, I thought about the woman I'd been when Derek first photographed my credit cards in the darkness of our bedroom. That woman had been trusting, generous, and determined to see the best in her husband, despite growing evidence of his deception. The woman I'd become was still trusting and generous, but now those qualities were balanced by unshakable confidence in my professional judgment and absolute determination to protect other women from similar predators. Derek had intended to steal my money, destroy my career, assume my identity, and ultimately murder me to complete his transformation into the successful person he'd never actually been. Instead, his crimes had revealed reserves of strength I'd never known I possessed and led me to a life of greater purpose and authenticity than I'd ever imagined. The most profound lesson I learned was that true security comes not from controlling others, but from building a life so authentic and strong that no one else can take it away from you. Derek had tried to build his success on stolen resources and manipulated relationships. When those foundations crumbled, he had nothing left. But my success was built on genuine expertise, authentic relationships, and the determination to use my experience in service of justice. No one could steal those things because they came from within rather than from external sources. As I prepared to close my laptop and join Marcus for dinner, I looked one final time at the photos covering my office walls. Pictures of the hundreds of financial abuse survivors our work had helped, images from speaking engagements and legislative victories, and snapshots of the genuine relationships that had sustained me through the darkest periods of recovery. Derek Williams had set out to destroy Clementine Williams and steal her life. Instead, his crimes had revealed the unbreakable strength that true empowerment requires and led to the creation of something far more valuable than anything he could have stolen. Sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing you'll ever do, but only if you refuse to let it define your worth or limit your future. Derek's betrayal had shown me exactly who I was when everything else was stripped away. The answer was someone far stronger than either of us had ever imagined. Have you ever ignored your professional instincts in a personal relationship because you thought being in love meant turning off your critical thinking? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help other people find it. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding strength, and share this with anyone who might benefit from learning about financial abuse tactics. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting survivors everywhere. Remember, trusting your expertise isn't unromantic, it's self-preservation. Stay strong, stay smart, and never let anyone convince you that your success makes you a target instead of a treasure. Turi